Hey, it's Bobby. So I was driving last night, kind of zoning out at a red light, and a story I read earlier in the day just kept poking at me. I almost didn't tell this one because on the surface it sounds like a normal family business spat. Dad retires, son takes over, daughter gets passed over, everybody cries about legacy. You've heard it before. But the more I sat with it, the more I realized this wasn't a passing over story. It was a story about a woman who had quietly become the entire spine of a company. And the family was so used to leaning on her that they forgot she could stand up and walk away. And when she walked, the whole thing fell sideways with her. So let me tell you about Maya. Maya is mid-30s, architect by training, operations brain by necessity. Her dad, Richard, founded this custom home builder called Sterling Homes about 30-something years ago. Big tan trucks, stone and cedar style houses. The kind of company where the founder shakes your hand on a job site and says, "We'll take care of you." Richard built it from one truck and a saw. That part is true. Everybody respects him for it. The thing is, the company you see today, the software, the scheduling, the client portal, the supplier system, none of that is Richard. That's Maya. She came in about 12 years ago when the business was drowning in paper invoices and angry clients, and she just rebuilt the engine while everybody was still calling her the daughter helping out. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, that's already the setup. The person doing the actual work gets called the helper. Then there's Leo. Leo is the younger brother. Charming, good hair, says things like, "We're not just builders, we're storytellers." You know that guy. He's the one in the company photos, he's the one on the podcast, he's the one taking clients to dinner on the company card. Leo's title was Director of Vision, which, translation, he had no actual job. He'd come into the office at 11, talk about a rebrand, and leave by 3. Maya signed his expense reports for years. Hotel stays in Aspen called Supplier Research. A boat slip rental called Client Experience. A $400 bottle of bourbon written off as a team gift. She kept every receipt. That little detail matters later. For about a decade, the system works. Maya runs the numbers, manages the project managers, handles the suppliers, keeps the clients calm when a permit gets stuck. Richard keeps shaking hands and telling stories about his first house. Leo keeps visioning. And Maya keeps her head down because Richard kept saying, "This is a family company. We take care of each other." Which, by the way, is the exact phrase parents use right before they don't take care of you. Here's where it tips. Richard decides he's retiring. 68 years old, knees aren't great, he wants to fish. He throws this big succession dinner at a steakhouse in town. Invites the senior staff, the lawyer, the accountant, a couple of longtime clients. Maya thinks she's being named CEO. Why wouldn't she? She's been functionally running the place since 2016. She has every contract memorized. She wrote the operations manual the company actually uses. The week before the dinner, Richard had even asked her to pick out a new desk for the corner office. She thought that was the signal. It wasn't. He was furnishing it for Leo. Richard stands up, taps his glass, gives this whole speech about legacy and the Sterling name. And then he says, "That's why I'm proud to announce that Leo will be taking over as Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Homes." Applause, people clinking glasses, Leo doing this fake humble face. And then Richard turns to Maya in front of everybody and goes, "And Maya, our rock, will continue as head of operations to support her brother." Continue to support her brother. I'm sitting here like, wait, did he just announce in public that the person who built the operating system is now the assistant to the guy who can't read a P&L? And nobody at this dinner blinks. Her aunts clap, her cousins clap, Somebody says, "Richard, that's beautiful." The accountant Frank, sitting 2 seats down, just stares at his plate. Maya told someone later that Frank was the only person in the room who looked her in the eye that night. He gave her this small, tight nod, like, "I see what just happened." That nod stuck with her. Maya doesn't say anything at the dinner. That's the first thing that tells you she's different. A reactive person flips the table. Maya just smiles, finishes her steak, and on the drive home, she starts a list in her phone. The list is real. It's titled Things I Built. First item, the project management software that every single Sterling job runs through. She wrote it. She paid the developer out of pocket back in 2017 when Richard refused to spend the money. There's an invoice with her personal name on it. Second item, client relationships. 80% of Sterling's repeat clients come back because of Maya, not because of the Sterling name. Third item, the supplier network. Half those suppliers will only extend credit because Maya personally signed for it. That list ends up being 23 lines long. A week after the dinner, she goes into Richard's office. Calm. Asks for 3 things: equity in the company, a written authority structure that doesn't make her Leo's subordinate, and a licensing agreement for the software. Because legally it was built on her time, with her money, and never assigned to Sterling. That's not Maya being aggressive. That's just true. The accountant Frank had told her years ago, "You really need to paper that software thing, kid." She'd been too busy. Now she wasn't too busy. Richard's face does that thing where dads pretend to be wounded. He goes, "Sweetheart, not everything in life is about money." And I read that line and I almost laughed out loud. Because that line is always said by the person who already has the money. Always. Leo walks in halfway through, like he was waiting outside. He's like, "Maya, come on. We're family. We don't need contracts between us. The company will take care of you like it always has." And I'm sitting there thinking, the company hasn't been taking care of her. She's been taking care of the company. Those are not the same sentence. She tries one more time. She says, "I want this in writing or I want a fair buyout." Richard says, "Don't be difficult." Leo says, "Don't blow up Dad's legacy over a title." That's the family script. Tradition, legacy, peace, family. Translation, stay useful and stay quiet. She nods. She says she'll think about it. And then she goes home and starts copying. Now, this is the receipts phase. And I want to be clear, because some of these stories make this part sound like a montage. It wasn't. It took her about 4 months. She didn't steal anything. She copied her own work. The software repository, her name was on every commit since the first line of code, because she was the only person who'd ever touched it. The developer she'd hired back in 2017 was still around, and he confirmed in an email that the contract had been with Maya personally, never with Sterling Homes LLC. She had the invoice, number 0042, paid from her personal checking on March 14th, 2017. She kept that PDF on 3 different drives. One at home, one in a paid cloud account she'd set up under her personal email, and one printed in a folder in a fireproof box. That last one is the kind of detail that tells you exactly what kind of person Maya is. She didn't trust the cloud alone. She wanted paper.
Then the admin trail. Every operational document. The bid templates, the project timeline templates, the client onboarding flow, the safety checklists, the supplier scorecards, all authored by her.
all stored in a workspace she personally owned. Sterling had been using them under what was basically an unwritten "she works here" assumption. There was no IP assignment in her employment file. She checked twice. She also pulled her original offer letter from 2013, which used the phrase operational support and made no mention of intellectual property at all. Frank had drafted that letter, back when he was wearing the HR hat too. He remembered. He told her it would hold up. Then Leo's expenses. She didn't even have to dig. She'd been signing them for years. She just pulled the last 36 months. Personal travel marked as business. A marketing retreat that was him and his girlfriend at a resort. $12,000 in restaurants in a single calendar quarter. A company truck that was a leased Range Rover. A client gift that was a pair of courtside basketball tickets used by Leo and his college buddy. All of it documented in the company accounting system, which she had administrator access to because, surprise, she'd set it up. Then the suppliers. She made one quiet phone call to each major supplier. The lumber guy, the windows guy, the stone yard, the HVAC subcontractor, just to check in. Each conversation ended with the supplier saying some version of, "Maya, you know we work with you. You ever go somewhere else, you let us know." She wrote down dates. She wrote down names. She wasn't poaching. She was confirming the temperature of the water. While she's doing all this, Leo is doing his Leo thing. He starts redecorating the office. He orders new business cards that say Chief Executive Officer in this thick gold font. He commissions a giant photo of himself in a hard hat for the lobby. He calls a staff meeting and announces a new direction, which is basically him saying he wants Sterling to do bigger projects, fewer of them, more luxury. The project managers look at each other because they know that math doesn't work with their current overhead. Maya sits in the back and takes notes. Not for him, for her. About 6 weeks into Leo's reign, he makes his real move. He sends Maya an email, copies HR, copies Richard, saying that effective immediately, her access to the financial system is being right-sized to her role. Translation, locked out. He says it's about clean lines of authority. The accountant Frank reads this email, walks straight to Maya's desk, closes the door, and goes, "Kid, he just handed you the case." That's a direct quote. Frank had been waiting for this. He'd been waiting, honestly, for years. 2 weeks later, Leo restructures her role again. He demotes her to Senior Operations Coordinator. Same work, less authority, less pay. The official memo uses the phrase, "to better align with our visionary direction." Visionary direction. I love that. That's HR speak for, we're trying to push her out without paying severance. And here's Leo's second mistake, the one he didn't see coming. That memo went out on company letterhead, signed by him, and it explicitly stripped Maya of authority over operational systems and tooling. In writing, he basically told a court in advance that he was treating those systems as separable from her. Pam, the lawyer, framed that memo and put it in the file. She told Maya, "He just told us your software isn't part of your job. Thank you, Leo." She still doesn't blow up. She doesn't write a long email. She doesn't call the family. She goes to a lawyer. The lawyer is a woman named Pam, who handles small business IP and employment stuff. Pam reads the file. Pam looks at Maya and goes, "You understand they have almost no leverage here, right?" Maya says, "I'd like to give them a chance to do this gracefully." Pam, I'm told, just laughed. Pam drafts a letter. The letter is 3 pages. Very calm, very specific. It says, number 1, the project management software currently running every active Sterling Homes job is the personal property of Maya, with documentation attached. Number 2, the operational templates are likewise her personal work product, with documentation attached. Number 3, Sterling Homes has no executed assignment of these works. Number 4, in light of the recent restructuring of Maya's role, Sterling has 30 days to either negotiate a license for continued use of these systems or transition off them entirely. Suggested license fee? A number. I won't say it, but it had a comma in it. Per month. She has the letter delivered to Richard's house and to the Sterling Homes registered office on the same morning, by courier. Receipts of delivery signed. This is the part where Leo thinks she's bluffing. He calls her. He's laughing. He's like, "Maya, what is this? You're suing Dad?" She says, "I'm not suing anyone. I'm asking for a license." He goes, "We don't need your software. We can rebuild it in a month." And I'm sitting there like, brother, you cannot rebuild in a month a system that took 5 years to mature. You can't even rebuild the username and password without her. Richard calls next. Richard does the wounded dad voice. He says, "Your mother would be ashamed." He says, "After everything this family has given you." He says, "We made you who you are." Maya says calmly, "Dad, I made me who I am, and I'm asking to be paid for the work I did." He hangs up. Then the family chorus starts. Aunt calls. Cousin calls. 2 cousins call. They all use the same 3 words. Legacy, family, peace. Somebody calls her greedy. Somebody says she's destroying her father's life. Somebody says, and I quote because this one stuck with me, "Not everything in life is about money." Said by a woman who lives in a house Richard helped pay for. That's the line that sums up the whole family. Maya doesn't argue with any of them. She just keeps documenting. Every call, every voicemail, dates, times, what was said. Pam told her to. She listens. Day 15 of the 30-day window, Leo decides to call her bluff. He sends a company-wide email saying Sterling will be transitioning off the legacy software to a new in-house solution. He hires a consultant. The consultant, a guy named Devin, takes one look under the hood and quietly tells Leo it's going to be a 6-month build, minimum, and they'll need access to the original codebase to even begin, which they don't have, because it's hers. Devin, by the way, ends up calling Maya 2 weeks later to apologize. He says, "I didn't know the situation. If I'd known, I wouldn't have taken the meeting." Maya tells him it's fine. She also asks if he'd be open to consulting for her new firm down the line. He says yes, immediately. That phone call, she didn't even plan. It just happened. Day 20, the wheels start wobbling. A subcontractor doesn't get his weekly schedule because nobody in the office knows how to generate it without Maya's templates. A client calls asking why her bathroom tile delivery is 2 weeks late and gets a project manager who has no idea what the answer is because the supplier scorecard system isn't talking to the calendar anymore. A permit expires because the renewal reminder lived in Maya's workspace and nobody migrated it. That permit alone cost Sterling $14,000 in refiling fees and a 3-week stop on an active job site. Day 23, the lumber supplier calls Sterling and says, "We're switching you to cash on delivery." Just like that. No more 30-day terms. Because Leo, in one of his new direction moves, had snapped at the lumber guy on a phone call 2 weeks earlier. The lumber guy had been polite. He'd waited. Now he wasn't waiting. Sterling needed about 80 grand in lumber that week. They didn't have 80 grand in cash that week. Day 26. The biggest active client, a couple building a $6 million lake house,
calls the office and asks, very politely, whether Maya is still managing their project, because their last 3 emails have gone unanswered. The receptionist puts them through to Leo. Leo gives them the visionary speech. The wife on the call says, "Mr. Sterling, I'd like to speak to Maya, please." Leo says Maya is transitioning. The wife says, "Then we are also transitioning. We're pausing the project until we understand what's happening over there." That's a $6 million pause on a company that was already about to miss payroll because of the lumber thing.
Day 30. Pam sends the follow-up letter. Very short this time. It says, "License has not been executed. Transition has not been completed. Sterling Homes is hereby on notice that continued use of Maya's software and templates after end of business today constitutes unauthorized use." It CCs Sterling's general counsel, a guy named Howard, who'd been on retainer for 15 years. Howard reads it, calls Richard, and says the words, "You have a problem." Howard then asks on the same call why nobody had ever shown him the original employment file. Richard didn't have an answer for that. That night, Richard shows up at Maya's apartment. Just Richard, no Leo. He looks 10 years older than he did at the steakhouse. He sits on her couch and he says, "Tell me what you actually want." And Maya, who had been preparing for this exact conversation for almost 5 months, opens a folder. The folder is the meeting. She lays it out one document at a time. The original software invoice with her name on it. The developer's email confirming the contract was personal. The list of templates with metadata showing her as sole author. The expense report summary, 3 years of Leo. The lake house client's pause email. The lumber supplier's COD letter. Leo's own restructuring memo, the one that stripped her of authority over operational systems. The 2 voicemails from cousins calling her greedy, transcribed and dated. And then the last page, a 1-page proposal. The proposal says, Sterling Homes is sold or restructured, with Maya receiving a fair equity stake reflecting the system she built. Or Sterling licenses her software and templates at the originally proposed monthly rate. Or Maya walks fully, and Sterling has 90 days to operate without her work product, during which time she will not be available for consultation. She calls them options. They're not really options. 2 of them end the company. 1 of them saves it. Richard reads the folder for about 40 minutes. He doesn't argue. At one point, he taps the expense summary and goes, "He spent how much? On what?" That was the moment Maya told the person she told this story to, that she realized her dad genuinely hadn't known. Leo had been signing off as CEO for 6 weeks. Before that, Maya had been quietly absorbing Leo's nonsense for a decade because she didn't want to upset Dad. Dad had no idea. Then Richard flips to the courtside tickets line item and just exhales. Long and slow, like a tire going flat. He says very quietly, "I trusted him with my name." Maya doesn't answer that one. There's no good answer. Richard says, "I need a few days." Maya says, "You have until end of business Friday." Then she walks him to the door. And he hugs her. Like he doesn't know who she is anymore. Which, fair. He'd been hugging an idea of her for years. Friday comes. Richard picks option 1, restructure. He brings in an outside operations firm to do a valuation. The valuation lands ugly. Sterling is technically insolvent if you account for the missed deadlines, the lost lake house, the COD with suppliers, and the projected cost of rebuilding the software. Richard sells 2 pieces of equipment and a piece of land he'd been holding for retirement. He uses that to settle with Maya. Not a giant payday, but real, fair compensation for the system, plus a clean exit. Maya signs the IP over to a properly licensed structure. The lawyer, Pam, papers it correctly this time. Everything in writing. And then Maya leaves. Leo, by the way, stays CEO for about another 4 months. He spends those 4 months telling people the company is going through a creative reset. The senior project managers, all 3 of them, quit within 6 weeks of Maya leaving. They don't go to her exactly. She's not poaching. But 2 of them call her and ask what she's doing next. And when she says she's starting her own boutique build management firm, they ask if she's hiring. She is.
The lake house clients, the ones who paused, call Maya directly about 3 weeks after she leaves Sterling. They've heard. Their question is short. Will you finish our house? Maya says she can manage it under her new firm, as a project manager, with a new general contractor of their choice. They say yes before she finishes the sentence. 6 months out, Maya's firm is small but real. 4 employees, a rented office above a coffee shop, 3 active projects. 2 of them inherited from former Sterling clients, who, again, were not poached. They followed the competence. A year out, she's at 8 employees, and she's licensing her project management software to 2 other small builders in the region for a flat monthly fee. That sideline alone is paying her old Sterling salary. Sterling Homes, meanwhile, is doing 1 project at a time, and Richard is back in the office full-time, at 69 years old, because Leo couldn't keep the lights on alone. Richard quietly demotes Leo to Director of Client Relations, which is a fancy way of saying Leo answers the phone now. The gold business cards got recycled. The lobby photo of him in the hard hat got taken down. Somebody told Maya it was replaced with a framed picture of the original Sterling truck from 1991. I think that detail is kind of perfect.
The family, predictably, splits. Half of them call Maya cold. The other half call Maya for advice because they finally realized which sibling actually knew how anything worked. The aunt who said, "Not everything in life is about money," sends Maya a long apology email about a year later that Maya, I'm told, did not respond to. Pam said don't. Maya didn't. Richard and Maya have dinner once a month. They don't talk about Sterling. They talk about fishing, mostly. He told her once, across a plate of pasta, "I should have made you CEO." She said, "I know, Dad." That was the whole exchange. That was enough. Here's what got me about this one. The family kept saying legacy, like the legacy was the logo on the truck and the last name on the door. But the legacy was the work. The legacy was the system that made the trucks show up on time, and the houses get finished, and the clients come back. They tried to hand the legacy to the son, who liked the photo shoots. And they tried to make the daughter who built the legacy into the assistant of the legacy. And when she finally said, very calmly, "Okay, then I'll take my work with me," they found out the legacy wasn't a name. It was a person. And she was tired. The other thing I keep thinking about is how cheap it would have been to keep her. A title, a real one, a piece of equity that probably wouldn't have changed anyone's life, but would have said in writing, "You matter." That's all she was asking for at the start. They could have paid for that with words, and they wouldn't pay for it with words, so they ended up paying for it with land, equipment, clients, and a son who now answers phones. That's the math of pride. It's always more expensive than the thing you refuse to give. The part that I keep coming back to is that she didn't yell. She didn't slam a door. She didn't go scorched earth on social media. She made a list, kept her receipts, hired a lawyer, and gave them a fair option. They picked the worst version of it because they were too proud to admit what they already knew. That she was the company. That she had always been the company. And that calling her family while treating her like staff was a deal she was finally done signing. Anyway, that one stayed with me longer than I expected. That's Bobby POV. Subscribe if you want another one. New story soon.